My name is Emma, and there are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. For me, that moment came on a cold Thursday morning at exactly 7:12 a.m. I remember the time because I had just poured my tea and was standing by the kitchen window, watching a dull gray sky stretch endlessly over the rooftops. It was one of those quiet mornings where nothing feels wrong, where the world seems paused. And then my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it. Unknown number. Something in me hesitated, but I picked up anyway. "Is this Emma Lawson?" A calm, professional voice asked. "Yes, this is Greenridge Medical Center. I'm calling about your brother, Daniel." My heart didn't stop, it dropped, like it missed a step and never quite found it again. "What happened?" I asked, already gripping the counter. There was a pause. The kind of pause that prepares you for something irreversible. "I'm very sorry, but your brother passed away early this morning." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even react right away. I just stood there, staring at the steam rising from my tea, as if it had nothing to do with me. "Miss Lawson," the voice continued gently.
How?
I finally managed. "A sudden cardiac arrest. He was found at home. Paramedics attempted resuscitation, but the rest blurred." I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember putting my phone down. I only remember the silence that followed. It felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. Daniel, my older brother, my only family, gone at 39. It didn't make sense. Daniel wasn't sick. He worked out more than I did. He barely drank. He was careful, methodical, annoyingly responsible. People like him don't just die. Eventually, my body caught up with reality. My hands started shaking, my knees felt weak, and I had to sit down. That's when the tears came, slow at first, then unstoppable. But even through the grief, one thought forced its way forward. I had to call his wife, Lily. I stared at her contact name on my phone for a long time before pressing call.
It rang. Once. Twice.
3 times. Finally, she picked up. "Emma?" Her voice sounded distracted.
Busy.
"Lily," my voice broke immediately. "There's something you need to know." "Can this wait? I'm about to go into a meeting." "A meeting?" For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. "No," I said, gripping the edge of the table. "It can't wait. It's about Daniel." Silence. "What about him?" The words felt impossible to say, like saying them would make it real. "He's gone," I whispered. "This morning, they said it was his heart." There was a pause. Then, "Are you serious?" I blinked. "What? Are you sure? Maybe they got it wrong." "The hospital called me," I said, my voice tightening. "They need someone to come identify him." Another pause. And then she sighed. "I really can't deal with this right now, Emma. I'm with my boss."
Can you handle it?
"I'll call you later." The line went dead. I sat there, still holding the phone to my ear, long after the call ended.
I didn't understand.
I replayed it in my head again and again. Her husband had just died, and she had a meeting? Something felt off. Not just strange, wrong. But I didn't have time to process it. I had to go to the hospital. The drive there was a blur. I don't even remember how I got behind the wheel. At some point, I must have called a taxi, because I found myself in the back seat, staring out the window as the city moved around me like nothing had changed. People were walking. Cars were honking. Life was continuing. How could it? At the hospital, everything felt too bright, too clean, too normal. A nurse guided me through quiet hallways, her voice soft, practiced. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said more than once. I nodded, but the words didn't register. Then she opened a door. And there he was, Daniel, lying still, peaceful, too peaceful. For a moment, I expected him to open his eyes and make some sarcastic comment about how dramatic this all was.
He didn't.
I stepped closer, my legs barely holding me. "That's him," I whispered. "My brother."
Gone.
The next few hours were mechanical. Papers. Questions.
Signatures.
I answered everything automatically, like someone else had taken control of my body. Lily still hadn't called back. By the time I got home, it was already afternoon. That's when my phone finally rang. Her name flashed on the screen. I answered immediately. Emma, she said, her tone flat. Sorry, it's been crazy today. Crazy. Yes, I said slowly. I can imagine. So, what's happening now? She asked. What do you mean? With Daniel. The arrangements. I closed my eyes. He's not an appointment you can schedule, I said quietly. He's dead. I know that, she snapped. I mean the funeral. And everything else. Everything else. I knew exactly what she meant. Money, property, assets. It hadn't even crossed my mind yet, but clearly it had crossed hers. I'll handle the funeral, I said. We can talk about the rest later. How much later? She asked immediately. Because there are things we need to sort out. Legally. I felt something shift inside me. Not grief. Something colder. I just lost my brother, I said. Can we not do this right now? She exhaled sharply.
Fine.
Just let me know when you're ready to discuss the estate. The call ended again. And this time, I didn't feel just sadness. I felt suspicion. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room surrounded by old photos. Daniel as a kid, Daniel at graduation, Daniel laughing, Daniel alive. And Lily, always beside him, smiling, looking perfect, looking genuine. Or maybe I had just wanted to believe she was. Because now, when I thought about her voice on the phone, it didn't sound like grief. It sounded like inconvenience. And that terrified me more than anything else. Around 3 a.m., I remembered something. The last time I saw Daniel, 3 days ago, he had called me, unusually insistent. Emma, can we meet? He had asked. There's something important I need to talk about. He sounded off, tense. I had told him we'd meet later that week. We never got the chance. Now I sat there, staring at my phone, replaying his voice in my head. Something wasn't right. And for the first time since that morning, I realized this might not have been just a tragedy. The morning of Daniel's funeral arrived far too quickly, as if time itself had decided to rush me through grief before I was ready to face it. I woke up before dawn, not because I had slept enough, but because sleep had completely abandoned me. My house felt unbearably quiet, every corner echoing with memories I wasn't prepared to confront. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. My eyes were swollen, my face pale, and there was something else, something colder behind my expression. Not just sorrow, awareness. I dressed slowly, choosing a simple black dress Daniel once said made me look too serious. The memory almost made me smile, but it vanished just as quickly as it came. By the time I arrived at the chapel, the sky had cleared into a painfully beautiful blue, the kind of day that feels almost insulting when your world has fallen apart. Everything outside looked alive, bright, untouched. Inside, I felt like I was carrying something heavy and invisible that no one else could see. The funeral home was already filling with people. Daniel had known many, colleagues, friends, neighbors, and they came in quiet waves, their voices low, their faces filled with sympathy. I greeted them automatically, nodding, thanking them, hearing the same words repeated again and again. He was such a good man. I'm so sorry. This shouldn't have happened. Each sentence felt distant, like it was meant for someone else. I moved through the room like a shadow of myself, present, but not fully there. At the front of the chapel, Daniel's casket stood surrounded by white lilies and soft candlelight. There was a framed photo of him beside it, one of my favorites. He was laughing in it, head slightly tilted back, completely at ease. Looking at it now felt almost unbearable. That version of him felt so real, so alive, that it clashed violently with the stillness of the room. I took my seat in the front row, and beside me, an empty chair, reserved for Lily. I kept glancing at the door, watching as more people arrived, hoping, despite everything, that she would walk in, that she would look devastated, that she would prove me wrong, that I had misunderstood her, misjudged her, imagined something that wasn't there. But as the clock ticked past the scheduled start time, the chair remained empty. The murmurs in the room grew quieter, more awkward. People began exchanging looks, subtle but noticeable. Even they felt it, something was off. Then, finally, the doors opened. All eyes turned. Lily stepped inside. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even trying to hide that she was late. She walked in with measured steps, her posture perfect, her expression composed. Her black dress was elegant, too elegant, more suited for a formal dinner than a funeral. Her hair was styled flawlessly, her makeup untouched by tears. She looked prepared, not grieving, prepared. "Sorry," she said softly as she reached the front row, slipping into the seat beside me. "Traffic. Traffic." I nodded, but I didn't trust myself to speak. Up close, I noticed something else, a strong perfume I didn't recognize. Daniel had always given her the same fragrance every year, something light and soft. This one was different, sharper, more expensive. During the service, I tried to focus on the words being spoken, but my attention kept drifting back to her. While I struggled to hold myself together, Lily sat perfectly still, her expression unchanged. No trembling hands, no tears, no signs of someone who had just lost the person they supposedly loved. Every now and then she glanced down at her phone, I realized. Subtle, quick movements, hidden behind her small clutch. At one point, Daniel's best friend, Marcus, stood up to speak. His voice cracked as he talked about their years together, about Daniel's loyalty, his kindness, the way he always showed up when it mattered. That was when I broke. The tears came uncontrollably, and I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop myself from sobbing out loud. Lily placed her hand on my shoulder.
Light. Brief.
Almost automatic. Not comforting. Just appropriate. That was the moment something inside me shifted again. The doubt I had been pushing away started to solidify into something sharper. Because grief leaves traces. It shows itself in the smallest details, in the way someone breathes, in the way they move, in the way they can't quite hold themselves together. And Lily had none of that. After the service, we moved to the cemetery. The air had turned cooler, the wind picking up just enough to carry the quiet sound of leaves moving across the ground. One by one, people approached to say their final goodbyes. When it was my turn, I stepped forward and placed my hand gently on the casket. "This isn't how it was supposed to end," I whispered. My voice barely made a sound. I stood there longer than I should have, unable to step away, until someone gently touched my arm. I turned, expecting Lily, but she wasn't there. I looked around and found her standing off to the side, slightly apart from everyone else. She wasn't watching. She was texting. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, her face focused, not sad, not distant, focused, as if she was in the middle of something important, something that couldn't wait. Even now, even here, a cold feeling spread through my chest. By the time we returned to my house for the reception, I was no longer just grieving. I was watching. People filled the rooms, speaking quietly, sharing memories, trying to bring some warmth into a day that felt impossibly heavy. I moved between them, listening, nodding, occasionally smiling through tears. These stories about Daniel helping someone with a project, staying late to support a colleague, showing up unasked when someone needed help, they reminded me of who he truly was. And every story made one thing clearer. He deserved better than this. Lily stayed for exactly 40 minutes. I noticed because I was counting. She moved through the room efficiently, saying the right things, nodding at the right moments, playing the role expected of her. But there was no depth behind it. No connection. It was like watching someone follow a script they had memorized but didn't believe in. Then, just as quietly as she had arrived, she announced she had to leave. Work, she said to no one in particular. Something urgent. Of course. She didn't even say goodbye to me directly. I watched her leave, the door closing softly behind her. And the moment she was gone, the air in the room felt different. Lighter. Emma, a voice said gently behind me. I turned to see Claire, one of my oldest friends. She had been watching everything, I could tell. How long has she been like that? She asked quietly. Like what? Detached, she said. That's not grief. I hesitated. I don't know, I admitted. We haven't been close. Claire studied my face for a moment, then leaned in slightly. I didn't want to say this today, she said, lowering her voice, but I think you need to know something. My stomach tightened. A few weeks ago, I saw her, Claire continued, at a restaurant downtown. She wasn't alone. I felt the world tilt slightly. What do you mean? She was with a man, Claire said carefully, and it didn't look like business. The room around me seemed to fade into the background. They were close, she added. Too close. I gripped the edge of the table beside me. Are you sure? She nodded slowly. I wouldn't say it if I wasn't. A silence settled between us. And in that silence, everything began to connect. Daniel's call, his voice. There's something important I need to tell you. My heart started racing, because suddenly, this didn't feel like coincidence anymore. That night, after everyone had gone and the silence returned, it felt heavier than before. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and doesn't let you breathe properly. I didn't turn on the lights right away. I just stood there in the dim glow coming from the street outside, replaying everything in my head. The call, the funeral, Lily's behavior, Claire's words. It all started to form a pattern, but I didn't want to admit what it looked like. Because if I did, then Daniel's death wasn't just tragic, it was something else entirely. I finally moved slowly, like my body didn't fully belong to me. I walked into the living room and sat down, still wearing the same black dress, still feeling like I hadn't left that day at all. My phone was on the table in front of me, and I kept staring at it, expecting it to ring, expecting Lily to call again, to say something, anything. That would make this feel normal. But it didn't ring. And the longer it stayed silent, the more unnatural everything felt. I tried to distract myself by going through old things, photo albums, small keepsakes, anything that still held pieces of Daniel. I needed to feel something familiar, something real. That's when I found it. A small metal key slipped out from between the pages of an old photo album and landed softly on the floor. I froze. I knew that key. It took me a second, but then I remembered exactly where it came from. Daniel had given it to me years ago. Just in case, he had said with a half smile, like it wasn't important. I picked it up slowly, turning it in my fingers. My heart started beating faster, not from grief this time, but from something sharper. Awareness. That same cold instinct that had been growing all day. That key belonged to his desk drawer. The one in his home office. The one that was always locked. I stood up immediately, because suddenly I understood something. Lily hadn't just been acting strange. She had been focused on something specific. And earlier that day, she had mentioned needing access to his office. Not for grief. Not for memories. For documents. My chest tightened. She was looking for something. And whatever it was, Daniel didn't want her to find it. I barely slept again, maybe an hour at most, and even that was broken, restless. By morning, I wasn't just tired, I was determined. The kind of determination that comes when fear and instinct finally align into something clear. I needed to get to his house. Before she did, I called Claire first. I need your help, I said the moment she answered. I'm already getting dressed, she replied without hesitation. Give me 10 minutes. That alone told me everything. She understood. Daniel's house stood exactly as I remembered it.
Quiet. Still.
Almost like it was waiting. The trees in front swayed slightly in the wind, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the door, unable to move. This had been his space, his life. and now it felt like a place holding secrets. Claire pulled up beside me. You ready? She asked gently.
No.
But I nodded anyway. We went inside together. The moment I stepped in, something hit me, a strange mix of familiarity and absence. His jacket was still hanging by the door. His shoes were still by the wall. His presence was everywhere except him. Where's the office? Claire asked quietly. This way, I said. I led her down the hallway, each step heavier than the last, until we reached the door. I paused for a second, my hand hovering over the handle, then pushed it open. The room looked untouched. Books neatly arranged. Papers stacked. His desk exactly the way he always kept it, organized, precise. Daniel had always liked things in order.
Control.
Except now, something about it felt different, like the calm before something breaks. I walked over to the desk slowly, and there it was, the drawer.
Locked.
My hand trembled slightly as I pulled the key from my pocket. For a moment, I hesitated, because I knew whatever was inside that drawer, once I opened it, there was no going back. Emma, Claire said softly, you don't have to do this alone. I nodded, took a breath, and inserted the key. It turned smoothly, too smoothly, like it had been waiting. I opened the drawer. At first glance, it looked ordinary, pens, papers, small office items. But then I saw it. A notebook, dark cover, worn edges, and, beside it, an envelope, with my name on it.
Emma.
In Daniel's handwriting. My heart stopped. For a second, I couldn't move. Open it, Claire whispered. I picked it up carefully like it might break, and slid my finger under the seal. The paper inside unfolded with a soft sound that felt louder than it should have. I started reading, and everything changed. He knew. From the very first line, I understood that Daniel hadn't just suspected something. He had been certain. He wrote about Lily, about another man, about how it started as a feeling, something small and nagging, and then grew into something undeniable. He had hired someone to follow her, to confirm what he didn't want to believe. And he had proof. Photos, messages, meetings. My hands started shaking as I read. Claire leaned closer, her expression tightening. Oh my God, she whispered. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came next. Money. Daniel had discovered large amounts missing from their joint account. Transfers he couldn't explain. Transfers that led to that same man. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something bigger. Something planned. I finished the letter, but I didn't lower it right away. I just stood there, staring at the words, trying to process what I had just read. He changed his will, I said quietly.
Claire looked at me.
What? He changed everything, I repeated. Because of this. She exhaled slowly, running a hand through her hair. Emma, if she knows about this. She does, I said immediately. Claire froze. She has to, I continued. That's why she's acting like this. That's why she wants access to this room. My mind was moving faster now, connecting everything. She's looking for this, I said, holding up the letter. Or whatever else he left behind. Claire glanced at the drawer. The notebook. I picked it up. Inside were dates.
Notes.
Details. Everything documented with the same precision Daniel applied to everything in his life. It wasn't emotional, it was methodical. Evidence. Real evidence. I closed it slowly. We can't leave this here, Claire said. I shook my head.
No.
But we also can't let her know we have it. A silence settled between us as we both understood what that meant. This wasn't just about grief anymore. This was a situation.
And it was dangerous.
I carefully placed the notebook back, along with everything else, except the letter. That I folded and slipped into my bag. Then I locked the drawer again, exactly as it had been. No signs.
No clues.
Nothing disturbed, because if Lily came here, she would think she was still ahead, and I needed her to believe that. As we stepped out of the house, Claire looked at me. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I'm going to find out exactly how far this goes, I said. And if it's what I think it is. I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to, because for the first time since that phone call, I wasn't just grieving my brother. I was preparing for the truth. By the time I left Daniel's house, I wasn't the same person who had walked in. Grief was still there, heavy and constant, but now it had something else wrapped around it: purpose. A quiet, controlled kind of anger that didn't explode, didn't shout, but sharpened everything. I kept replaying his letter in my head, every word echoing with intention. He hadn't written it in panic. He had written it because he knew something was wrong. And now I knew it too. The next step was obvious. I needed to speak to his lawyer. Daniel had always been careful with legal matters, always planning ahead, always thinking 3 steps forward. If he had changed his will, then someone knew exactly what those changes were, and more importantly, why he made them. I called the office as soon as I got into the car. My name is Emma, I said, my voice steady despite everything. I'm Daniel's sister. I need to speak with Mr. Carter. There was a pause on the line, followed by a shift in tone. Yes, of course. He was expecting your call. That made my grip tighten on the phone. Expecting. Which meant Daniel had planned this. Can you come in this morning? The receptionist asked. Yes, I replied immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The office was exactly what you'd expect. Quiet, polished, controlled. Everything in place. It felt like stepping into a different world, one where things made sense, where there were rules and structure. I needed that. Mr. Carter stood up as I entered, his expression serious, but not surprised. Emma, he said gently, I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you, I replied, taking a seat. He told you about me, didn't he? He nodded. He said that if anything happened to him, you would come. A chill ran through me. I reached into my bag and placed the letter on his desk. I found this, I said. He read it carefully, his expression tightening with every line. When he finished, he exhaled slowly and folded it back with precise movements. This confirms everything he told me, he said. My heart started racing. What exactly did he change? Mr. Carter opened a file, sliding it slightly toward me, but not fully handing it over yet. Daniel revised his will 3 weeks ago, he said. Significantly. How significant? I asked. He met my eyes. He removed Lily from almost everything. The words landed harder than I expected. Almost, I repeated. The law requires that a spouse receive something, he explained calmly. So, he left her a fixed amount. How much? $10,000. I let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. She thinks she's getting half, I said. Mr. Carter gave a small, knowing look. People often believe what benefits them most. I leaned back slightly, processing it. So, everything else? Goes to you, he said, with specific instructions for certain donations and projects he wanted completed. That hit me differently, because that sounded like Daniel. Even in this, he was thinking about what came after. About meaning. About purpose. There's something else, Mr. Carter added. My attention snapped back to him. He reached into the folder and pulled out another envelope. He asked me to give you this personally. I took it slowly, my fingers tightening around the edges. What is it? He didn't say, Mr. Carter replied. Only that you should view it alone. That made my stomach tighten. I opened it carefully. Inside, a USB drive. And a short note. Everything is here. My pulse quickened. Everything.
What does he mean by that?
I asked quietly. Mr. Carter shook his head. I don't know, but based on what he told me, I would assume it relates to Lily. I closed my hand around the drive. Suddenly, everything felt heavier, more serious. Is she aware of the will? I asked. Not yet, he said. The official reading is scheduled for Monday. I nodded slowly. No, I said after a moment. Don't tell her anything. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You're sure? Yes, I replied. Let her come expecting everything. A brief silence passed between us. Then he gave a small nod. Very well. When I left the office, I checked the time. 1:42 p.m. And suddenly I remembered. Lily. We were supposed to meet at Daniel's house at 2. I hadn't forgotten. But now I understood something much more clearly. She wasn't going there for documents. She was going there for evidence.
And she believed she still had time.
I got into my car and drove faster than I should have. Her car was already in the driveway when I arrived. Of course it was. I stepped out slowly, steadying myself before walking inside. The front door was unlocked. That alone made my chest tighten. I walked in quietly, and I could hear her. Drawers opening, closing, fast, impatient. I followed the sound down the hallway, and there she was, in Daniel's office, standing at his desk, pulling things out, searching, her movement sharp and focused, not emotional, not distracted, focused. Looking for something. Exactly what I expected. What are you looking for? I asked from the doorway. She jumped. Actually jumped. For the first time since I had seen her after his death, she looked shaken. Emma, she said quickly, trying to recover. I didn't hear you come in. Clearly, I replied, stepping inside. Her eyes flickered toward the desk. Then back to me. I was just organizing some files, she said. I looked at the scattered papers. That doesn't look like organizing. She forced a small smile. Daniel was messy. I almost laughed. Daniel?
Messy?
That alone told me everything. I walked closer, slowly, deliberately. Interesting, I said, because I always thought he was very precise. Something shifted in her expression.
A crack.
Small, but there. I spoke to his lawyer this morning. I added casually. That did it. Her entire posture changed. You did what? She snapped. Without me. There it was. Not grief. Not sadness. Control. You didn't think to include me? She continued. I'm his wife. Yes, I said calmly. You are. I let the silence stretch. Then, I wonder what kind of wife doesn't answer when her husband dies. Her face hardened instantly. Don't start that again, she said sharply. I'm not starting anything, I replied. I'm just observing. Her eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then help me understand, I said quietly. Another silence. Tense. Heavy. Then I took one more step forward. Tell me about him, I said. She blinked. What? The man you've been seeing, I continued. And just like that, everything changed. Her face went completely still. Excuse me, she said too quickly. I tilted my head slightly. You heard me. That's ridiculous, she said, but her voice had lost its balance. Is it? I asked. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. Daniel thought otherwise. That was enough. I saw it. The moment fear appeared. Small, but real. You're bluffing, she said. Am I? I replied. I held her gaze. Steady, unmoving. And for the first time, she looked unsure. Monday, I said calmly. You'll hear everything then. Her breathing had changed now. Slightly faster. What do you mean? I mean, I said, stepping back toward the door. You might not be getting what you think. Her eyes widened just a fraction. Emma, I think you should leave, I said, cutting her off. She stared at me. Anger, fear, calculation, all fighting for control. This isn't over, she said finally. I know, I replied. And I meant it. Because this was only the beginning. Monday arrived with a strange kind of clarity, the kind that only comes when something inevitable is about to happen. I woke up before my alarm, not because I was rested, but because my mind had already been running for hours. There was no confusion left in me anymore, no hesitation. Just a quiet, controlled focus. Today wasn't just about a will. It was about truth. finally being dragged into the light where it couldn't be ignored or twisted. I got dressed slowly, choosing something simple and dark, not out of obligation, but because it felt appropriate. Not for the occasion itself, but for what it represented.
Closure, maybe.
Or the beginning of something else entirely. I kept thinking about Daniel, about how calm he must have been when he recorded that video, when he wrote that letter, when he decided to change everything. He knew something was wrong. And now, I was about to see just how much he had uncovered. Mr. Carter's office felt different this time. Not just quiet, but tense, like the air itself was waiting. He greeted me with a brief nod, his expression serious but steady. "Are you ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," I replied. I took my seat beside him at the long table, placing my bag carefully on the floor. Inside it was the USB drive. I hadn't watched it yet. I wanted to, but something told me to wait, to let it unfold here, where it mattered most. At exactly 10 a.m., the door opened. Lily walked in, and she wasn't alone. A man followed her, sharp suit, confident posture, the kind of presence that immediately tells you he's used to control. Her lawyer. Of course. She didn't look at me right away. Her focus went straight to Mr. Carter, her expression composed, almost impatient. "Let's begin," she said, as if this were just another meeting on her schedule. I watched her carefully.
No grief. No hesitation.
Just expectation. She sat across from me, her lawyer beside her, and finally her eyes flickered toward mine. There was something there now, something different from before. Not confidence, exactly. More like tension hidden behind confidence.
Good.
Mr. Carter opened the folder in front of him. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of Daniel Reed," he began, his voice calm and formal. "This document was executed 3 weeks prior to his passing and replaces all previous versions." Lily shifted slightly in her seat, but said nothing. The room felt smaller, quieter. Every sound seemed amplified. The turning of a page, the faint hum of the air conditioning, the subtle movement of fabric as someone adjusted their position. Then came the moment. "To my wife, Lily Reed," Mr. Carter continued, "I leave the sum of $10,000. Silence. It lasted less than a second, but it felt longer. Then, "What?" Lily said sharply. Her composure cracked instantly. 10,000, she repeated, her voice rising. "That's not possible." Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, a subtle warning, but she pulled away. "This has to be a mistake," she said, looking between us. "I'm his wife." Mr. Carter didn't react. "The will is clear," he said calmly. "All remaining assets are allocated as follows." "No," she interrupted louder now. "No, that's not how this works." Her lawyer leaned forward slightly. "My client contests this immediately," he said. "There are grounds to believe this document was created under undue influence." I almost smiled. Undue influence. Of course. I stayed quiet. Let them speak. Let them reveal everything. Mr. Carter continued anyway, unaffected. "The remainder of Daniel's estate, including property, accounts, and investments, is left to his sister, Emma." Now she looked at me fully. And this time, there was no control left in her expression. Only shock. "You knew," she said slowly. I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. "Yes," her lawyer continued, regaining composure. "We will be challenging this. This is highly irregular, and—" "There's more," I said. My voice cut through the room. Everyone turned to me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the USB drive. "This," I said, placing it on the table, "is from Daniel." Lily froze. Not subtly. Completely. Her eyes locked onto the drive. "What is that?" her lawyer asked. "A message," I replied. "Recorded 3 weeks ago." I looked at Mr. Carter. He understood immediately. Without a word, he set up his laptop, inserted the drive, and turned the screen so everyone could see. The room went silent again. And then, The video started. Daniel appeared on the screen.
Alive.
Tired but focused.
Real.
My chest tightened instantly, but I forced myself to stay still. Emma, he began, his voice steady. If you're watching this, then something has happened. Lily's breathing changed. I heard it.
Small.
Uneven. Daniel continued, explaining everything. The affair. The investigation. The money. The lies. Every detail laid out clearly, calmly, without emotion clouding the facts. No room for denial. No space for interpretation. Just truth. When he mentioned the financial transfers, Lily's lawyer leaned forward, his expression shifting from confident to concerned. When Daniel spoke about confronting her, that's when everything broke. You're worth more to me dead than alive. The words echoed in the room. And Lily, she couldn't hide it anymore. The color drained from her face. Her hands trembled. Her entire posture collapsed inward, like something inside her had just snapped. The video ended. Silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Then I broke it. I've also taken this to the police, I said quietly. That hit harder than anything else. What? Lily whispered. Her lawyer turned to her sharply. What is she talking about? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. There's an investigation, I continued, because a healthy man doesn't just die overnight. Now her breathing was visible.
Fast. Shallow.
You're lying, she said, but there was no strength behind it. Am I asked. Her lawyer stood up suddenly. This meeting is over, he said quickly. We'll be in contact. He grabbed his papers, his composure gone, and turned to her. Lily, he said quietly but firmly. We need to go. She didn't move right away. She was still staring at the screen. At Daniel. At the truth she thought she had buried. Finally, she stood. Slowly. But before leaving, she looked at me one last time. And in that look, there was no more pretending. No more control. Only fear. Real fear. The door closed behind them. And just like that, everything changed. I sat there for a long moment after they left, staring at the blank screen. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. For the first time since that morning call, I didn't feel lost. I felt certain. Mr. Carter closed the laptop gently. You did the right thing, he said. I nodded. I know. Because now, it wasn't just about a will anymore. It was about justice. And something told me, this wasn't over yet. 2 days after the will reading, my phone rang early in the morning. This time, I didn't hesitate to answer. I already knew somehow that this call would change everything again. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end was calm, controlled, and familiar in tone. Emma, this is Detective Harris. We need to speak. I closed my eyes for a brief second, steadying myself. You found something, I said. There was a pause. Yes. That single word was enough. I'll come in, I replied. The police station felt colder than I expected, not physically, but in the way everything inside it carried weight. Decisions, consequences, truth. Detective Harris met me in a small office, closing the door behind us with a quiet click that sounded louder than it should have. We received the autopsy results, he began, sitting across from me. My hands rested in my lap, still controlled. And? I asked. He studied me for a moment, like he was measuring how much I could take. There were traces of a substance in Daniel's system, he said. A cardiac glycoside. In high doses, it can trigger heart failure. The words landed slowly. Poison, I said. He nodded once. Yes. I didn't react immediately. Not because I didn't feel it, but because part of me had already known. Not logically, not with proof, but somewhere deeper, where instinct lives. He didn't just die, I said quietly. No, Harris confirmed. He was killed. The room felt smaller, tighter, but I didn't break. Not this time. What happens now? I asked. We've already brought Lily in for questioning, he said. And the man mentioned in the video, Richard. Even hearing the name made something in me tighten. And I pressed. Harris leaned back slightly. He talked. Of course he did. Men like that always do when the pressure hits. He admitted to the relationship, Harris continued, and to financial involvement. The transfers Daniel mentioned, they were real. My mind replayed the numbers, the notes, the evidence Daniel had carefully documented. And Lily? I asked. Harris's expression shifted. She denied everything at first. Then she stopped talking, which meant she was thinking, calculating. Too late. There's more, he added. I looked up. She had been researching substances, he said, specifically ones that could mimic natural cardiac events. A cold silence filled the space between us. Premeditated, I said. Yes. That word echoed differently. He wasn't just killed. He was planned. The arrest happened that same afternoon. I didn't go to see it. I didn't need to. But I watched the footage later, alone. Lily being let out of her office. No makeup this time. No perfect posture. No control. Just a pale face and eyes that no longer knew where to look. For a moment, I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel anger. I felt something else. Finality. The trial moved faster than I expected. Evidence has a way of doing that. When everything is clear, documented, undeniable, there's not much left to argue. The messages, the financial records, the research history, the video Daniel left behind, and her words, "You're worth more to me dead than alive." That sentence alone seemed to follow her through the entire process, like a shadow she couldn't escape. In the end, she didn't fight it. She made a deal. 20 years. Second-degree murder. I was there the day the sentence was read. I didn't dress in black this time. I didn't want to look like I was still mourning. Because I wasn't. Not in the same way. When they brought her in, she looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. The confidence, the control, the calculated calm, all gone. She didn't look at me at first. But when she finally did, there was nothing left in her expression to hide behind.
No anger. No denial.
Just the quiet realization that she had lost everything. I held her gaze. And I didn't look away. Because she had taken something from me that could never be replaced. But she hadn't taken everything. The months after were different. Not easier, but clearer. Grief doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It becomes something you carry instead of something that crushes you. Some days were still heavy. Some nights were still too quiet. But I wasn't lost anymore. I had direction. Daniel had made sure of that. I followed every instruction in his will. The donations. The projects. The things he had cared about when he was still here. It felt like finishing something he had started, like continuing a conversation that hadn't been allowed to end. One of those things became the most important. A small foundation. At first, it was just an idea written in his notes, something about helping young people who couldn't afford education in design and engineering. It had been his dream, something he never had time to build. So I built it. Not alone, but with the help of people who had known him, who had respected him, who had seen the same things I had seen. The first year, we gave out 3 scholarships. The second year, 7. Now, it's more than that. Much more. And every time I meet one of those students, every time I hear their plans, their ideas, their excitement, I see him. Not in a way that hurts. In a way that continues. I sold the house eventually. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need a place to hold memories anymore. I carried them with me. Instead, I moved somewhere smaller, quieter, a place with a garden. Daniel had always liked gardens. I didn't understand why before. Now I do. There's something about growing something slowly, patiently, watching it change over time. It teaches you how to live with loss. Not by replacing it, but by making space around it. Sometimes in the evening I sit outside and talk to him. Not because I think he can hear me, but because I can. I tell him what's changed. what's growing, what still hurts, and what doesn't anymore. I tell him that he was right about everything and that he didn't disappear. Not really, because people don't disappear when what they leave behind keeps moving forward. Lily thought she was taking everything, his money, his future, his life. But she was wrong, because the most important things, the things that actually mattered, were never hers to take. And they never will be. That's my story. And now I'll ask you something. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have trusted your instincts? Or ignored them? Think about it. Because sometimes, the truth is there long before we're ready to see it.